At the turn of the 20th century, one man could stop a financial panic with a single meeting behind closed doors. J.P. Morgan didn't just finance America's rise, he engineered it. Railroads, steel, electricity, he stitched them into empires, deciding which companies lived, merged, or vanished. When markets collapsed in 1907, the government turned to him, not the other way around. So who was really in charge of the US economy, the elected officials, or the banker in the library on Wall Street? J.P. Morgan rose to power by consolidating fragmented railroads into efficient monopolies that reshaped American industry. In the late 1800s, America's railroad system was chaotic, with dozens of competing companies building overlapping lines, slashing prices, and often driving each other into bankruptcy. This instability created an opportunity for someone with capital, connections, and discipline to step in. Morgan became that figure. Rather than building railroads himself, he reorganized them, buying up struggling lines, restructuring their debt, and placing trusted executives in charge. His goal was not competition but stability and profit through coordination. This process, known as Morganization, reduced wasteful competition and imposed order on a chaotic system. By controlling major rail networks, Morgan didn't just make money, he gained influence over the backbone of American commerce. Railroads determined how goods moved, which industries thrived, and which regions developed. Morgan's consolidation efforts marked a turning point in U.S. economic history, shifting power away from scattered entrepreneurs towards centralized financial control. It also set a template for future monopolies, where efficiency and dominance went hand in hand, raising questions about whether stability justified the concentration of so much economic power in the hands of one man. Morgan orchestrated the creation of U.S. Steel, the first billion-dollar corporation, by merging competing companies into a single industrial giant. At the turn of the 20th century, the steel industry was booming but fiercely competitive. Led by powerful figures like Andrew Carnegie, Morgan saw an opportunity not just to invest, but to dominate. In 1901, he negotiated the purchase of Carnegie Steel for roughly $480 million, an astronomical sum at the time. He then combined it with other steel companies to form U.S. Steel, the first corporation in the world valued at over $1 billion. This was more than a business deal, it was a demonstration of financial engineering at an unprecedented scale. Morgan showed that Wall Street could control industry, not just fund it. By consolidating production, U.S. Steel could stabilize prices, reduce competition, and exert massive influence over the economy. The deal also symbolized a shift in power, from industrialists who built companies to financiers who controlled them. Morgan didn't invent steel, but he controlled who produced it, how much, and at what price. This marked the rise of modern corporate capitalism, where size, scale, and centralized control became defining features of American business. During the Panic of 1907, J.P. Morgan acted as a one-man central bank, organizing private capital to prevent a total financial collapse. The crisis began with a failed attempt to corner the copper market, which triggered a loss of confidence in banks and trust companies. As panic spread, depositors rushed to withdraw their money, threatening to bring down the entire financial system. At the time, the United States had no central bank to manage such crises. That responsibility fell to Morgan. From his library in New York, he gathered the most powerful bankers and industrialists, and forced them to assess which institutions could be saved and which could not. He personally coordinated millions of dollars in emergency loans, stabilized key banks, and even arranged for the rescue of the New York Stock Exchange. Morgan's intervention stopped the panic, but it also revealed a troubling reality: the stability of the U.S. economy depended on the decisions of a single private individual. This moment directly influenced the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, as policymakers recognized the need for a formal system to manage financial crises. Morgan's actions were both heroic and unsettling, highlighting the immense power concentrated in private finance. Morgan's control over banking networks allowed him to influence corporate leadership and shape entire industries from behind the scenes. Unlike industrialists who built factories or invented products, Morgan operated through capital and connections. His firm underwrote securities, issued loans, and decided which companies received funding. This gave him enormous leverage. When a company needed capital, it often had to accept Morgan's conditions, which included placing his allies on boards of directors and adopting his strategies. Over time, this created an interconnected web of corporations tied to Morgan's influence. He could coordinate decisions across industries like railroads, steel, and electricity, effectively reducing competition and increasing stability. Critics called this the money trust, arguing that a small group of financiers controlled the nation's economic destiny. Congressional investigations, such as the Peugeot Committee in 1912, exposed how deeply Morgan's network reached into American business. While supporters argued that his leadership brought order and efficiency, opponents feared the erosion of free competition and democratic control. Morgan's power was subtle but pervasive, shaping the direction of the U.S. economy without holding public office or facing direct accountability. J.P. Morgan's dominance helped trigger reforms that led to the creation of the Federal Reserve and new regulations on financial power. By the early 20th century, Morgan's influence over Wall Street had become impossible to ignore. Events like the Panic of 1907 demonstrated both the necessity and the danger of relying on private bankers to stabilize the economy. Public concern grew over the concentration of financial power, especially after investigations revealed how a small circle of bankers controlled vast portions of American industry. In response, lawmakers pushed for systemic reform. The result was the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which created a central bank designed to manage the money supply, provide emergency liquidity, and reduce dependence on figures like Morgan. At the same time, antitrust efforts gained momentum, aiming to break up monopolies and limit corporate consolidation. Morgan himself died in 1913, just as these changes were taking shape, but his legacy directly influenced them. His career highlighted both the strengths and weaknesses of concentrated financial power, its ability to bring order in times of chaos, and its potential to undermine competition and democratic oversight. In many ways, modern financial regulation was built as a response to the world Morgan helped create.